Hello, everyone. I am excited to be talking to you today because it feels like just one of those major events just happened. This debate that we saw was the 9/11 of debates.
Angela, this is the 9/11 of birthday parties.
I'm sorry.
And I will make this clear. Some conservatives are cheering or were like, oh, Biden performed so badly. Can you believe it? This was one of those things went so bad that I do not think that even Republicans should be happy about what happened in this debate. It was horrifying. It was.
Hi, guys.
Good morning, Tracy.
Now, Lucas, can you tell us what happened?
I heard the noise, and I got up from bed and went into the kitchen door. When he saw I had the gun, he put his hands up and said, "Please don't shoot."
But you didn't listen to him,
You
right?
shot him in the leg, didn't you? You put one right through the kneecap, right?
Yeah, it was like bang really loud, and he fell down screaming, and there was lots of blood coming out.
Lucas, you really are a
He
hero.
started crawling away and crying, so I shot him in the back.
Yeah, you must be so proud of your son, Jack.
And then I
Of course,
stood
who
over
wouldn't
him and
be?
shot him like bang, bang, bang.
Well, that's one crook that's not going to be breaking into anybody else's home, is he?
Yeah, he wouldn't stop talking, so then I shot his jaw off. Yeah, but then he started screaming, "Arr!"
Yeah, right.
And then I shot off each one of his fingers, and then he stopped screaming.
I'll put a clip here from this old Onion skit where a kid defends a home from an intruder with a gun, and you're like, at first, oh, that's sweet. And then he describes how he keeps shooting, and that's what we saw. It was very much, okay, I'm betting on like a kickboxer or something. And then he goes onto the ring, and his opponent is like a toddler or not ambulatory. And I'm there for the next 2 hours watching a little kid get beaten up by a full-grown man at full fury and with full anger on, which is not a fun thing to watch.
Yeah, painful.
Painful. Yeah, it was painful. The entire thing was a painful experience because Biden should not have been allowed on the stage. So first, I'm going to set some context for people who didn't see what happened, because there's two really transformative things that happened in this debate that I think like we need to address. One is being talked about a lot, which is that Biden is basically a non-functioning human being. He is, and people can use words like dementia, but what we saw, whatever word you want to use, keep in mind that this debate, one, Biden spent an entire week before this debate isolating himself.
At Camp David, yeah.
At Camp David.
Preparing
The
for
debate-
this, resting.
Yeah, was structured and keyed to give Biden an advantage. It came with 2 commercial breaks, which usually you wouldn't have any commercial breaks in a debate like this, to give him a period to rest. It came with, they would turn Trump's mic off when Biden was talking. It had everything you needed to set things up for Biden. And yet you have him almost falling asleep at the podium. You have him unable to hold a consistent chain of thought. And I'd point out that his answers were clearly canned answers. So it wasn't even that like he didn't know how to respond in the moment.
What was clear to those watching, I think, is that he was giving rehearsed answers, but he was forgetting his lines and then jumbling them sometimes.
Yeah, mixing up rehearsed
Mixing up
answers.
lines. And yeah, and then, Trump had such a good rejoinder when I'm sorry, I don't really know what he just said. I don't even think he knows what he said. It was really getting to that point where no one really knew what Biden was saying, including Biden.
So there's 3 points I really want to get to in this video. Point 1 is, what did the Democrats do at this point? Like they basically need a new candidate. I don't know what they can do, and I'm really worried about how they're going to handle this. 2 is, what does it mean that America right now basically doesn't have a real president for the bureaucracy and functioning of this country and for the way that other countries are going to relate and react to this event? And then the final point, which is the one I'll start with, is actually Trump. A lot of people didn't note this about Trump because I don't think it fits dominant conservative narratives to talk about, and it doesn't help dominant lefty narratives to talk about. So just no one has been mentioning it. But in the debate, Trump was incredibly moderated compared to old Trump. This is not the Trump that was running in the last election cycle. This is not the Trump from the election cycle before. There were differences in Trump between these 2 election cycles. This, to me, felt like a almost a completely different candidate aping Trump.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
I guess I just don't remember. I have a terrible memory, though, to be fair.
He just didn't go overboard as much.
I honestly think he felt bad for Biden. If anything, at one point, for example, about Biden's policies, he said, I don't even think this is Biden's fault. I think he just doesn't know. I honestly think that he feels bad for him and also understands the stresses of the job and generally is a good guy. And I know show don't tell is really the way to do this. And Trump is certainly not the most empathetic person in the world. And he did say, I've got the biggest heart of all during this debate. But I think he does actually have a big heart. And even he was seeing how Biden was being trounced in this debate, and he was feeling bad. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I think that might be what caused the moderation. And I would say that you don't need to have a big heart. I personally don't think Trump has a particularly big heart. I think he is a bit of a narcissist. And
you can be a narcissist and have a big heart.
But I think even somebody who is fairly self-involved would feel bad in that situation. And so that was probably also what was causing the strange behavior from Trump, is he maybe just felt uncomfortable with what was happening.
Yeah.
That I guess is what we were seeing there. The second,
I also think that Trump is falling in with some good people. I think he's got a better advisory team this time around. He's got some very smart backers this time around. I'm really thrilled with how he's interacting more with like the Silicon Valley tech crowd this time around. He is much more bullish on crypto. He is much more bullish on AI. He's much more bullish on a lot of things that I think are really smart. And he didn't talk about it in this particular debate, but he has much more sophisticated ideas and policies around things like immigration that have me actually very excited.
For example, about one of those.
When he was on the All In podcast, this might have been the first time he brought it up, but I think he'll hold to it. And there's enough audience for this podcast where he's going to be held to it. But he said that anyone who graduates from college in the United States should be authorized to work here.
That is
there should be
brilliant.
a
I
pathway
would
for
love that
citizenship
1,000%.
I know. And I'm like, hello, this is what I've been looking for. And yeah, what you're hearing from him now is close the borders. He sounds very anti-immigration because Americans are very concerned about that. But keep in mind, these are immigrants who are not taxpayers. These are immigrants who are doing on social services. And what he's talking about here is not only stymieing that, but encouraging high revenue generators, contributors to economic productivity and taxpayers to come here. And I just think that's great. So I also feel like Trump has a much more intelligent and well-informed policy. And I think what this comes down to, especially because we're being led by a gerontocracy, is who are the puppet masters and who are the advisors who are feeding the scripts to and directing the policies of these presidential candidates. And I'm not just concerned about the fact that Biden is a husk of a person at this point, functionally speaking. I'm more concerned about Biden's advisors, to be quite honest.
Who's actually running the country right
now?
Yeah,
and who's actually running the the country is leftist extremists, that Biden himself is a centrist. And you can actually see the fact that his centrist views are not really being well executed on by what's happening in our country right now. It's scary. It's not that there's nobody at the wheel. There's somebody at the wheel. They were not elected. They're not centrist. And we have no oversight over them.
I agree with everything you're saying here, and this does bring us to the next point of who's really running the country right now. But before we get to that point, I want to reflect on something that you've been saying, because I think that this is something that other people may not be picking up on a lot, and even some like Republican commentators, because it's not in their best interest to bring this stuff up, is the teams around Trump in every one of these election cycles have been very different types of people. The first time around, it was the people who were in a position where it made sense to risk their career. Because backing Trump the first time he was running, you had to literally be willing to risk your career to back him.
I also think that it was more of a press and meme group and not a policy and business and professional and legal group. Because I think really what Trump expected from the first election was, this is a lot of free publicity. This is a huge press stunt. and I'm going to pivot this into a media channel or a new series or something like that. That was the expectation. Nobody, including Trump, thought that Trump was going to win. And the people that he surrounded himself with were hype cycle people, were media people, were commentators.
You're absolutely right.
And that's why when he came in to execute, he had absolutely nothing to work with and they didn't know what to do because that's who he was surrounded by. Now you're totally right that the mix is different. It's people who actually execute, people who actually lead.
I think it's interesting that it took him 2 cycles to find this crowd. I think by the time he was running in the next election cycle, he still wasn't really surrounded by, I guess I call them like elite intellectuals yet. He was still more surrounded by, I guess, like the cult of Trump. And he did have personality cult at the time. And the second time through, I think his perspective is the reason things didn't get done the first time is because the people in his administration weren't loyal enough. And they weren't loyal enough to his ideas or his vision. And that makes perfect sense. I can understand why he would have thought that given the betrayals that did happen. And of course, are going to happen if you're selecting for this media bombast community. But then when you're optimizing on loyalty, what you find is loyalty is not a good sign of competence or ability to execute or ability to understand what Americans want.
Yeah.
This cycle, he seems much more surrounded by competent individuals, particularly techie competent individuals. And I see a lot more of his original New York liberal side coming through in how he's debating and acting, because the other big difference between this election cycle and the last election cycle is the last election cycle, he was still to an extent trying to prove he was a real Republican, because that was, and I think a lot of people forget this, when Trump first was running, everyone was like, bro, is this guy's a progressive? He's been a New York progressive his entire life.
Yeah,
He's
so he's
just
kind of
running
overcorrecting, you think, for that?
Yeah, I do think that he had genuinely become something like a conservative, but he certainly wasn't what the Conservative Party was before him or used to be. And so he needed to prove himself. And so I think he went overboard with some of his conservative positions. And it led to huge miscalculations on his part about how to appeal to Americans. Even in the general last time, I think he was going too far to the right to try to prove to conservatives that he was a conservative. I think the Trump we're seeing in this election cycle is somebody who is absolutely confident in who he is and that he has the party's backing no matter what. And anyone who's out there saying, Trump, you need to move to the right, Trump, you're not conservative enough, he's very much of just a fuck off.
Yeah.
And I think that he is smart to be doing that. As I have mentioned in statistics, and we'll go over this later, but if you look at like Republicans under the age of 30, about half of them, 47%, believe in abortion under any circumstances. If you're looking at
Yeah,
the
and he's talking
Republicans,
about the various exceptions, rape, incest, and risk of life.
yeah,
to
which is what
mothers.
he's going for, which is actually the normal position among the conservative base. But
Mhm.
if you are, for example, applying to be a member of Trump's White House on the Heritage Foundation's form, one of the checklists is, do you believe life begins at conception?
Yeah.
So the people who are, and unfortunately, putting together parts of his administration right now are like pretty far right of the policy he actually wants to implement.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that this is going to speak to the mainstream Republicans much more than historically he was able to. And I also think he's going to be, yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I expect him to be more publicly pro-gay this election cycle, like he was a little bit in the first election cycle, and at the same time anti sort of the parts of the trans community that have become very extremist, because it's such an easy win issue for conservatives. Like the trans people in sports stuff and stuff like that, it's like a point that like doesn't really matter society wide, but it is so easy to win because for whatever reason Democrats won't back down from it, even though like everyone can see that these people have an advantage. So now I want to talk about the point you're making about who actually determines how a person acts is the people who are around him. I will say I am a little concerned that the Heritage Foundation is doing the staffing, given the ways that they were filtering people on the staffing application. That was like, these are not Trump's views. Why are you filtering based on these views? Oh, it's because they're your views. That said, the Heritage Foundation is still mainstream conservative intelligence, right? And they were people who historically would not have engaged that much with Trump in things like the first election cycle. But there's negatives to that because there is this capture of this old guard that does seem to have a little too much influence over Trump now. And I hope that he can move to the techie side a bit more.
Yeah.
I think his VP will show who he's really siding with. Either way, still we're going to vote for him. Now with Biden, I think almost like intentionally, we don't know who's really operating everything. And I think you're right. It is progressive extremists who are running everything in the Biden administration right now. Now, fortunately, progressive extremists are also extremist bureaucrats. And so they are very bad at getting things done. But that doesn't mean that they can't cause damage.
Oh, I think we've seen what happens. We've seen the damage. So, yeah.
But I also think it's also just like a bizarre phenomenon to be an American right now. Like when I talk about this, it feels, like now we all know that the president isn't mentally functioning. Like it's out on the table. It's almost like one of those countries where after Lyndon died, they put him in like a glass box and they're like, oh, he technically still rules the country. That's what I felt like I was seeing there, is somebody rolling out a corpse and then being like, or marionetting a corpse basically. And I'm like, okay, who's holding the marionette strings? Because that's what we need to be talking about right now. And I don't think that this is something that like we are actively, like the immediate takeaway from this shouldn't be, oh my God, the impact on the election cycle. It should be, oh my God, who's running the country?
Right.
So that was terrifying.
Yeah.
The final point I really want to get into is what can Democrats realistically do at this point? Simone is of the perspective, those are betting odds, by the way. Maximum Lot betting odds. We actually have Maximum Lot, the guy who created the site, slated to come on the show. What?
Maxime Lot.
Maxime Lot, yeah. Sorry, I always think of it as Maximum Lot, but it's not. The electionbettingodds.com. They have right now Trump at a 58.3% chance of winning the election and Biden at a 22.7% chance. So that's insane.
Wild.
And then in terms of who's next, it's 9.3 for Newsom. And then after Newsom, 3.3 for Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama is actually above Harris.
I swear to you, if she ran, people would be so excited, right? I think honestly, the biggest problem with those betting odds is I don't think she would personally go for it. I think she's screw that. Not my thing.
You don't think she's interested? Maybe.
She could be, but I don't get the impression that's her thing. It could be, but
I think it's going to be a disaster if they run Kamala Harris. Democrats.
They're not going to, because they know that people don't like her. I think, but I don't. It's clear to me a couple of signs why I think Biden is going to be switched out. We're going to get an old switcheroo, and that there will actually be really good odds of the next Democratic candidate winning. Is one, they took 30 minutes to regroup and send their surrogates and commentators and spin masters out.
Which usually they do right away.
Yeah. The Trump people were out right away. They had to figure out what on earth are we going to say, because I think everyone was pissed. Everyone honestly didn't know how to salvage the situation. And then the following day, today, when we're recording this, although it's going to come out a little bit later, there are endless editorials. Biden, we love you, but you've got to step down. It seems like the liberal media as well is trying to come together and present a united front of this cannot happen. And we're several weeks away from the point at which we do have to actually select what is it called? The convention, the Democratic National Convention. So I think they have plenty of time to, in the background, figure out who it is they're going to select and select them. That's it.
So historically, Democrats were able to do stuff like this. You had a group of high power individuals, and this happened in one election cycle, for example. But yeah, the Democrats switched out who their candidate was last minute, and not based on like popular vote or anything like that. They're just like, this guy won't do well. And as I remember, it ended in electoral disaster when they did that, the last time they did that. So we also need to be aware that like when people do this historically, it ends in disaster. But here's why I think they almost can't do this, or if they do it, it's going to be disastrous for them. The most recent core thing where the Dems lost a lot of public support was the Hillary-Bernie fight. A lot of people felt the delegation was stolen by Bernie from the old bureaucrats who control the party and given to Hillary. And so there's a lot of mistrust. And that was even in an open election. That wasn't like they appointed Hillary without asking for the public's consent or what the Democratic public wanted. They were just like, okay, now you go, right? If they just install somebody, it's going to look like a betrayal of the base, and the base is going to get very angry about this. And just authoritarian, because this is the worst of the image from the perspective of the base, which is we have no control. This is all a giant bureaucracy. It's all cronies. And that aspect of the Democratic Party, the base hates. I was talking to you this morning about like specifically why I don't think like the obvious candidate would be Kamala Harris, right? That is his VP. Like, why not put her?
Technically, yes, but
Yeah, from like a
the vice president is technically the backup, but not palatable to people.
But not palatable, but uniquely unpalatable, because she is unlikable for the same ways that Hillary Clinton was unlikable, but more. And this appointment would be even more ham-fisted than the Hillary appointment. So when people don't understand what I'm saying here, both Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton are an iteration of progressive that is incredibly fascistic, sort of, in the way that they think about things, i.e., yes, they believe the urban monoculture should control things, but they believe that the urban monoculture should control things using a really strong police force, using basically troopers, using their power of government, and the people making all these decisions on behalf of the citizenry should be like an elite bureaucracy, i.e. the people who are at the top of what Trump calls the deep state right now. And it's easy to see how they gain these positions. These are people who their entire lives have been surrounded by that community, at least for the last 20 or 30 years. They don't really know the general public anymore, or are able to conceive of them as like thinking people. And the problem is that the Democratic base isn't like that. The Democratic base is much more like Marxist, but not Marxist from a like the way Marxism actually ends up implementing itself often, which is more fascistic. But really, everyone should have total control over their lives. All cops are bastards. Ban prisons, ban the court systems, They may not hold those positions exactly, but they're very anti-authority, I guess I'd say, or anti-directed bureaucratic authority. And Kamala Harris represents the exact opposite of that. I do think, and I can see why Michelle Obama is beating her in the odds, because I do think that Michelle Obama could come in. And I think that she would be popular. I think that Trump would have a hard time competing against Michelle. Now, the way I would do this, if I was the Democratic establishment now, is they can't not have any vote at all. They basically need to have a nationwide vote among registered Democrats outside of the normal voting systems. Maybe do
that's
it.
not going to happen.
It would be totally feasible to organize an online poll. Basically, they need.
Again, that's not going to happen. You have to keep in mind that it's the people that would have to give up power to allow for something like that to happen are unwilling to surrender that power. They believe that they are the ones that are well suited to make this decision. They think very little of actual Democrats. Do not forget that. Mm-hmm. They don't actually give a shit about actual Democrats. And aside from just trying to avoid attrition from Democrats who are they can't even hold their nose to vote for Biden, which is a big issue now, they know that most Democrats are going to shut up and vote along with their party, just like with Republicans too.
But it's not going to be enough to win now. Not if Biden's running.
Yeah, not if Biden's running. They have to get rid of him, but they're going to choose who they get in place. They're not going to listen to the people, please.
I love how little faith you have in the bureaucratic elite.
It would be the same if this were the Republican Party. Let's not be.
No, the Republicans are controlled by an old bureaucratic elite now, and Trump for a while represented the counterfaction to that, but now they're sucking up to him more, which is going to cause downstream negative effects. And I am a little worried about that. So we'll see what happens, because I don't think that represents the base, but I do see at least Trump hasn't been ideologically captured by this group. He still seems to be doing his own thing, and even more so than he did historically. Think that through that, it's going to be hard to compete against a Trump that is actually honest about Trump views. And
not just that, at least, for example, a lot of the people that we know and work with who have startups, who have businesses, who care about science and tech and advancement are actually genuinely excited about Trump because of the appointments he has lined up. That it's just from a policy and governance perspective, Trump winning would be really exciting, genuinely good, not just, oh, we like him better, or he seems more competitive as a candidate.
Yeah. I just feel like everything politically has changed. Everything politically has changed. This is one of these like sea shift moments in my life.
And this isn't just that. This could be a watershed moment for Democrats who haven't yet been fully aware of this yet, and even for some Republicans, of just how much the Democrat establishment and the media has been willing to lie about the president of the United States and his present mental state and fitness. And that it was plausibly easy to shrug off his various gaffes and the moments when he would freeze and everything else as an exaggeration or fake, or as the now is trying to be spun by the president's administration. I think they're calling them cheap fakes. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I guess it's just their way of trying to make it sound like it's not real, but it's real.
Yeah, this is happening.
This was now, after being told again and again by these groups, Biden is fine, Biden is sharp, he's firing on all cylinders. Now they're seeing for themselves over the period of this debate, this guy cannot hold a cohesive thought for a long period of time. He's not able to memorize and spit out facts. He sounds, just even when he had good singers that he was getting in, he sounded very old and feeble. And keep in mind that voters vote for people who look powerful and presidential, that this is not even about what people are saying verbally and how strong and logically consistent their arguments are, or even how grammatically correct their sentences may be. It is about how electable and presidential they look and seem. And he did not seem presidential.
I think more than that. And I was also talking about Trump's more moderated energy in this debate. Part of it might actually be that this is what Trump looks like when he's becoming enfeebled, is he just doesn't have the energy to be old Trump anymore.
I don't think that's it. Like hearing other recent interviews with him, he's fine.
You don't think that's it? Okay.
He's funny.
Whatever
he's
it
fine.
is,
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I would say that something that I think a lot of people are going to come away from this thinking, because, I watched like the Jon Stewart coverage on this, and he's like, Trump is just lying about all of these things. Like, can you believe it? And he didn't point out, which every sane American is thinking, yeah, but like the entire media establishment and Biden's entire team apparently
has been lying to us for
about
months.
His mental state. What do you mean Trump, even if Trump is lying, which, yeah. Trump
and first, that's no news to us. Trump exagerates or misstates.
Yeah, it's not like, oh God. This is a new thing. Yeah. But with Biden, we're like, but like you guys were all lying. The media was all lying. The entire apparatus of the government bureaucracy was lying. What are you on about? Like, it is no new person was like, oh yeah, Trump exaggerates sometimes. Or I love Trump's lies because sometimes they're just like so outlandish when he's, I never said lock her up. And you're like, what? And he's like, but I could have done it. And that was one of those moments where I'm just like, okay, that's like obviously a lie, but also hilarious. So there has been like,
I think what he meant in his head, although of course he's misstating it, is that he didn't invent the phrase lock her up.
I think he meant I didn't invent that phrase, and I never really intended to fully lock her up. I was just getting in mind with campaign moments. Yeah, it was like but what I'm saying is nobody here is like, oh my God, Trump exaggerates.
Yeah.
But what I think a lot of people didn't know is that the entire presidential administration was capable of systemically lying to them about something that every one of them knew, and most of the media elites probably knew as well.
Yeah.
That was really interesting to me. And I am just so interested in where things go. Obviously, Simone's running right now. Top of ticket is mostly going to determine if she wins. She's convinced she has no shot right now.
Well, that's because the district in which I'm running has more registered Democrats than Republicans. And in past elections, the unaffiliated, independent, and libertarian voters have voted Democrat. Plus, now they have an imperative to vote Democrat because of Roe versus Wade being reversed, meaning that states have to decide whether or not there's reproductive choice. So most of these groups, because most Americans support reproductive choice, if they're willing to make votes based on that, they have to vote Democrat.
Well, even most Republicans do, which I think a lot of people
and that is actually why, and I've seen this door knocking and talking with people in our district, that is why many Republicans are now voting Democrat. So I'm just like, of course,
Who your position on this, they'd vote for you.
and yeah, if they knew that I would protect reproductive choice and IVF and abortions through 15 weeks.
Which is more restrictive than the existing abortion policy, I should point out.
In
but
Pennsylvania,
only,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, abortions past that in the case of these extreme situations. For example, the mother is at risk, or even personally for me, not to shoot myself in the foot by being clear about this, but if you have to choose between terminating a pregnancy as early as you learn that any baby that is born is going to suffer and die horribly, yeah.
which you learn sometimes, and we know people have had to go through that.
And then this has been a heartbreaking problem for a non-trivial number of mothers after the reversal of Roe versus after Dodd's. That's terrible. No mother wants that.
Yeah, I find this I think Democrats had this one in the bag because of the whole Roe v. Wade backlash at first.
Same.
And now, not only do they not have this in the bag, I have no clue what they can do.
Yeah.
And it will have effects past this election. If they ham-fistedly put in a candidate like Kamala Harris, the Democrats are going to permanently lose a portion of their base.
They're not. It might be Gavin Newsom. They might find someone a little bit more fun, but it's not going to be, definitely it's not going to be Kamala Harris.
She's Hillary 2.0. Like, it's not going to work for them. Like,
and they know that it's not going to be Kamala Harris. It's going to be, I still think I would put 60% Biden, 60% a non-Kamala Harris alternate.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I don't think Gavin Newman will do well.
Newsom.
I think Gavin Newman will permanently lose
Newsom.
a portion of their base as well. I think just due to identity politics reasons. If the powers that be in the Democrat Party install a
what they need is a black woman. What they need is Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
Which would be amazing. But
easy choice in terms of a black woman that they could put in.
Who else could they do that's a black woman? That
I really think the other choice, and I know this is a long shot, but in terms of her popularity with the base, is AOC.
No, because she's too extreme. She would scare away centrists. You cannot do AOC.
She would galvanize, get out the vote, maybe as much as Trump. You don't think so?
No, it wouldn't be OC. She'd be great for like younger voters, but guess it's old people. We should say distinguished and more experienced voters who vote. It's not young people. It's just not.
This is a crazy time to be alive to have watched that.
Yay! Woohoo! Election year. Stars and stripes. Gotta vote.
I'll put on the South Park song.
South Park song.
Vote, bitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you just say that voting is ridiculous?
No, I think voting is great, but if I have to choose between a douche and a turd, I just don't see the point.
You don't see the point. Oh, you young people just make me sick. Your friend Kyle told me you don't understand the importance of voting. Apparently you haven't heard of my Vote or Die campaign.
What the hell does that even mean?
What you think it means, bitch.
Democracy is founded on one simple rule.
Get out there and vote or I will motherfucking kill you. I like it when you vote, bitch. Shake them titties when you vote, bitch. I slam my Jimmy through your mouth roof. Now get your big ass in the polling booth.
Vote or die, motherfucker, vote or die.
You can't run from a 38, go ahead and try.
Let your opinion be heard. You gotta make a choice.
Cause after I slit your throat, you won't have a fucking voice.
All right. You got this, girl.
You're a great mother, Simone. I love you guys. Have a great day.
Love you. Check it out. I've got Hiccups McGee over here in her Stars and Stripes. So this is going to be appropriate. It's going to be the right kind of episode. Look at you. You're patriotic today.
I love you.
Hiccups.